in the den of iniquity. Vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment. What a pity. Tomorrow never certain. What dwells behind the curtain? The face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble that either pop or topple. Many will fall and stumble. Let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso. Cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.
Hello, hello, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ike, and today I'm going to be showing you, telling you, demonstrating to you, convincing you why 2020, this very year is the perfect year to scale, to 10x, to grow your finance, your business, your production, your operation, whatever it is that you got going on there. Well, what's the argument? Well, basically, in times of uncertainty and turmoil, things can be granularized more. Okay, and this granularity leads to the quality of scalability. But we're going to spend some time talking about that. And to help us have that conversation, we got in the building, someone whom is not a stranger to this channel, but it has indeed been a while, sir. What's up?
Not much. Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure, and it has been a while. I feel like this happened before the pandemic, right?
Yeah. How's my microphone, by the way? Is it too loud or is it just
No,
right?
it's perfect. How about mine?
Pretty good.
Okay.
So
we're using the same mic,
So now, if you don't mind introducing yourself, okay? You are, I believe, in the university you wear two hats. You're
That's
both
right.
the president and the head of admission
Admissions
in the law school.
The law school, that's correct.
Okay, well, go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Okay, for those who don't know me, my name is if I call my credentials, I'm doctor, right? But I'm Dr. Aitwa Ogyamin. I'm the president of American Heritage University and the head of admissions for our law school. And amongst that, I do some other things, business consulting. I run a consulting firm. I am a music producer, a husband and father of 3 boys.
Wow, very well put. A polymath, and also laid down the family situation. Now, you're an MBA type individual. And today we want to talk about what scaling is, why, how, and we're going to review a video by the Wolf of Wall Street speaking about scaling. But still, my argument still remains, ladies and gentlemen, and I will convince you that in times of uncertainty, there's a lot of opportunity for scaling. Those are the best times actually to grow. Now, if somebody were to ask me what is scaling, I'm going to give this answer, and then we're going to ask you if I'm missing something or if there's something to add. So scaling or scalability is the ability to multiply or divide something, right? So you want to put a factor on it, 2 times or maybe half, right? And when it comes to business, it's a question of your inputs that you want to be able to increase or reduce in order to get certain outputs that you want. And generally, you'll call these things variable costs, right? They vary with the output. So you got a bakery. If you make 10 cakes or you make 100 cakes, the fixed cost, which is the rent, doesn't change, okay? But there's some costs like the units of eggs, butter, milk, the man hours, the BTUs of heat, right? That's going to vary with the, shall we say, baking of the cakes. And these things are generally scalable, right? Those are your scalable things. And you want to be able to scale because, number one, growth covers all sins, right? You can grow your way out of any problem. Okay.
That's right.
If you were worried, oh my God, what was going to happen? Something happened in 2021 and you thought it was going to be the end of the business, but then you grew 200%. What problem? What 2021, right? That kind of a thing. And then, but also scalability gives you the ability to be able to change with the market. So the fact that I'm able to granularize certain things know what my variable costs are, and then go up and down with them allows me to be able to morph with market conditions, right? Have I generally laid the landscape as to what scaling is?
Yes.
And okay, anything to add?
No, I think that I think as we unravel the different topics and questions in the show, we'll get to some pretty interesting stuff that that fit this topic.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. So let me go ahead and share this video, okay? Because I think that there are many things here, there are many moving parts that are often not seen. And I think that the guiding principle here should still remain that we are in a time of uncertainty, and this is the perfect times to scale, not in a time when things are great. Actually, that's the opposite. If you're playing
Right.
your cards right and you have the that's why you have to have that cash on hand or whatever it is you may be able to use. There are always opportunities to buy things. There are always opportunities to poach people in terms of getting people from your that are getting laid off from your competitors, let's say. And also, as we know, people are forced to look at their variable cost in times of uncertainty. People who work for corporations, they know this. When times of uncertainty come in, you tighten the belt. When you tighten the belt, those variable costs, or employee expenses and all those other things, everyone gets focused on that. Hence, it's a good time. In other words, a famine is a good time to granularize things, take advantage of scalability, blah blah blah. But anyways, let's begin by playing this clip from Wolf of Wall Street here, Mr. Jordan Belfort, whatever, and he talks about scaling, and let's see what gems he's got for us.
Hey, JB here. The Wolf is in the house for Whiteboard Wednesday. Guys, new location, right? Whole long story. Don't want to get into it, but
Fair
here I
use.
am in a new location. I'll tell you another time. But I got a great topic today. So I've been thinking, sometimes there are some things that I take for granted because I've been doing them for so many years. Not that I'm so freaking old, but got a lot of years behind me in business, right? So there are certain basic things that have allowed me to take any business I have and scale it, right? And that's a big deal. But I think I've passed some of that basic stuff over and I've really shared it with you. When is it time to scale? How do you scale? And most importantly, do you scale in a straight line? Or is there some sort of strategy where you go up, you go back a bit, right? Well, that's what this is about here, right? So here's the deal. First point is that when I talk about entrepreneurship, I always break it down into these two different aspects, right? I say, number one, you have to learn how to fail elegantly, meaning how do you go into business or test an idea in a division and be wrong and live to fight another day? That was my first business. When I didn't know how to do this correctly, I failed miserably. I spent 18 months in some terrible business that never had any real future. I lost all my money. I almost created, well, for a time, I did create some limiting beliefs about my own ability to be an effective business person, right? Now, I overcame those beliefs and started again. But the point is, I didn't understand that when you go into business, there are certain basic fundamental rules that you have to follow. And every time you disobey them, like the fate god will just piss on you. And I assure you, his urine stream is like a fucking fire hose, okay? He doesn't mess around, right? So you can't tempt the god of fate. For example, when you start a business, here's how you tempt the fate god. And you're so certain that your idea is so great, so perfect. So you just get a beautiful office. You hire all the employees. You even hire the customer service people because when the incoming calls come in, you want to make sure you have good customer service, right? I've actually made that mistake, right? Hire like 8 people and let's go. And no one calls because the marketing's not right. The positioning is off. So when you are going into business, there's this overarching principle of lean and mean. Anytime you can do something and test it, keeping low overhead, very few employees, outsourcing, even if it means paying a lot more.
Okay, so let's say a couple of things because what I hear, and then because there are many things that you can react to, and you feel free to react to whichever. The idea of failing elegantly and whatnot, but vis-a-vis scaling, okay, the idea here is basically to keep the low overhead and then use a low overhead environment to understand your variable cost, which is basically what the experimentation is about, right? I always say go out there and get a customer. The customer is the most important thing for you. Okay, now to understand what he's talking about here in again in terms of the scaling is understand first before you scale, keep your overhead low so that
Right.
you understand the granular aspect, the units, how many units of Jeff hours versus this particular tool versus this particular resource. We're talking about the bakery earlier, and we're talking about cakes and flour and such. understand that in a very controlled, small environment with low overhead is one of the main things there that ties to this talk. But anyways, anything so far? Any comments as to what Mr. Jordan Belfort has said?
I think what excuse me, what he's saying is exactly what I'm doing in my business actually right now. Running the university. For anyone who's been part of this pandemic, which is everyone, you'll know that the pandemic affected businesses differently. You look at a company that make face cloth or face masks. The pandemic was a fruitful year or time for them. Look at companies like Zoom, their sales skyrocketed, their stocks went up. You look at YouTube live streaming, that those were the institutions that benefited from the pandemic. Educational institutions, however, took a hit. A lot of schools closed down. um, Lots of changes were made that most institutions weren't prepared for. So as soon as the pandemic hit, I literally took this concept that we just watched and brought that into my business. And that's something that, I mean, if you would like for me to elaborate on that now, I can. But that is something that I took, and I'm asking myself, is this legal? you know, because because I'm like, why didn't I do this all along? So I don't know if
Mm.
you want me to get into those details
No,
right
no, no.
now.
Get into it. Get into it.
Okay.
Let me see
Okay.
what the through line is here. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, so what I did is the first thing that happened was the our governing agency said, we had X amount of time to get our programs accredited. And for anyone familiar with accreditation or compliance, it's a dirty job because it's not fun. No one's clapping for you. You can go 18 months and you get a response saying not good enough. So it's always a challenge for institutions or businesses that are going through any kind of certification or accreditation. So when they sent me an email saying, "Hey, your programs need to be accredited by this X amount of time," I realized that because of the pandemic, I had lost a lot of momentum. So I said, "Okay, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of that programs, apply for some new programs, and pretty much start those programs again. That way, I get the minimum of 5 years to get them accredited and meet the state of California standards."
Hmm.
So in the process of doing that, I had to redo my learning module systems. I had to redo learning objectives. I had to redo textbooks. I had to redo everything. And very quickly, I realized that without any programs in the school, I can't enroll any students. So there's no profit. Without without the students, like you said, the most important part of a business are the customers. So without any customers, I can't pay my staff, I can't get paid, and certainly my overhead is going to get affected. So I took a different strategy. So what I started doing was, the first thing I did was I outsourced. I reached out to a partner of mine in India and I said, "Hey, I need some of your faculty and staff if they can assist me with getting these programs set up." And he says, "Oh, sure, no problem. I'll give you 35 of my staff. It's on the house, no charge," because I had an existing business relationship. So that took care of implementing.
Pause right there. Besides the existing business relationship, was there any other reason why you think he was uh, willing to? In other words, he was being affected too by whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so he needed perhaps something for these people to do. So the point being, in times of uncertainty, he
Mhm.
talked about the fact that, hey, you're going to be forced to look at the variable costs, right?
Right.
Which is what you were looking at, and to granularize things and to understand the units of things so that you can then rearrange
Right.
possibly and also be more make things more amenable to scaling. But
Right.
also other people are going through the same thing. So that little shiny pen that you wanted the whole time, the guy's not willing to give it to you, and so. But anyways, go on, continue if you will.
Yeah. So yeah, I appreciate you breaking that down a little bit. I think I skipped through some really important keys. So I reached out to him and I said, "Hey, here's the situation." And then what that gave birth to is I used to have a couple of employees. One of them I paid full time, one of them I paid part time, and the other employees were either on a stipend or when they teach a class, like instructors for my
Mhm.
faculty. For when they teach a class, then they get paid for teaching. So what I did is I said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to hire people to do projects." So I would reach out to people I've worked with in the past before and say, "Hey, I have this program and I need you to go in there and pull out 100 multiple choice questions. These are the chapters, and I need some essay questions. I can pay you X amount of dollars for this project." Now I was paying someone full time, over $4,000 a month to do what I was having someone do for me a week for something like $300 a project.
Mhm.
And I was particularly looking for people that I know can do the job, but that money that I would pay them was going a long way. So I would get one person and say, "Hey, I need you to do this for me. I'll give you $300." I'll get another person, "I need you to do this for me. I'll give you $200." And I have another person, $200. So right there, that's $700. And they've done what I would have paid one employee that I was paying over $4,000 a month. And of course, for those of you familiar with businesses, paying an employee 4,000, you're also paying tax, you're also paying the IRS. So that 4,000 is really like 6,000. So what I learned very quickly with that experiment is that, wait a second, I only spent $700 in a week, and I got a month's work. And then in addition to that, I went to there's a gentleman in India I met through I believe it was can't remember the name of the platform, and I met him. And for those of you familiar with the conversion rates, $200 in India is a decent amount of money, right? So I paid him about $250 to do what I would have to pay someone $2,500 to do. So in 1 month, I got the production of an army literally with spending less than $1,000.
Okay, this is all very good so far. So, as we go along this story, as we go along this journey here, we're gonna hear certain catcalls from the sideline. One I just heard was, "Hey, you're taking away our jobs and stuff like that." And then I turn around and what I would say is this: "No, what I'm asking you to do is what he is doing, what I'm doing." In other words, I'm asking you to be the person that is actually in the position to outsource stuff because basically it's like this. It's the technology that has now made it such that you don't have to be a mega corporation in order to take advantage of the global labor market.
That's right.
It is not some kind of a crime, okay? In other words, you can be a victim of current geopolitical and technological conditions that make it such that there is a global, shall we say, labor market. You can be a victim of that, right? Or you can be, while being a victim, okay, you can try to participate. You don't need a permanent HR
That's right.
per se. You don't need a permanent personal assistant. You don't need a permanent just about anything. So
Right.
again, being forced to granularize and look at things in terms of different units. Before you were just looking at employee and he gets paid this much. Now
Right.
you can look at the projects and
Right.
how much is it worth out there in the market.
That's
And
right.
then when you granularize and break apart what he was doing into a particular task, because here's one thing, okay, very important, and I'll let you kind of continue here. But the idea again is that things are scalable when you can put them into units,
That's correct.
because there is a number you want to multiply or divide, right? So it's like, what are these units? So if you break down an employee's role into a set of tasks, when the job comes in, and let's say, for example, you are in like an engineering service business, or again, we're talking about the baking, but let's baking product enough. Let's use a service example as well. Okay. So when a job comes in, okay, somebody looks at it, reviews it to see what exactly the client wants. And then it has to be quoted in the sense of, okay, somebody tells the client, here, here's what it's going to cost, right? How long does that typically take? Somebody writes a particular proposal, takes in the invoice, does this, that, or the other, and all the way through till the drawings are done, the calculations are done, things are stamped, it's sent out to the client, the stuff is approved, and stuff starts getting built, right? All that entire process, what exactly is involved with them? How many hours, how many units of X, Y, and Z? Okay, because you can pick out any one of those tasks and you can find out that you can go into the marketplace, and you can ask someone else, hey, can you do this? Can you collate this thing for me? Can you, anyways, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here.
No,
Okay,
I think you're doing fine.
yeah, point being, you got to granularize things,
Right.
make them units, understand how you can then outsource these different aspects. And in times of uncertainty like this, like in 2020, 2021, these are the perfect times to do these kinds of things when things are more fluid. Okay, but any more with regards to what we've seen so far in the video?
No, I think that I just want to touch up on something that you said. The what's the magic, if I'm permitted to use that word, the magic here is understanding exactly what your individual business needs are. And that's the exercise that I think I enjoyed the most, because all of a sudden I realized that I needed these three systems in place, these three systems working. And when you can make that identification, you can scale a lot faster, because then I say, okay, I need my learning module system running. I need my book resources and PowerPoint systems running for sure. And I need to have these three email accounts. So as long as I have these three email accounts, the following are going to happen. And that's the beauty about this exercise, is that you start to understand what your business needs to survive and what's going to get you through. Because you take an office building, you have, even in fact, when the pandemic started, we used to have 13 offices. We had a big building with 13 offices. As soon as the pandemic hit, I was like, all right, if everyone could work from home, that means I don't need 13 offices, right? So I could go down to 5. And doing that, I was able to drop my overhead. So I'm sure we'll talk more about it. I don't know if you're going to play some more of the video.
Oh yeah,
'cause,
yeah.
yeah.
We're gonna play a lot more of the video, but I think that there are two things that there are two aspects which turn out to be one. The one aspect is you're starting a business. The second aspect is it's a time of chaos or uncertainty. And those two things kind of mirror each other in this regard. Because he was talking about when you start a business, keep your overhead low and that kind of
That's
thing.
right.
You do an experimentation. The
Right.
same thing happens when the business cycle hits things like this is, okay, now bring down that overhead, see
Mhm.
what's really going on, relearn, and then you can actually scale. You're almost getting like a restart, a reset, if you will. Hence the argument, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, make sure you like, you share, you subscribe. Okay, over here we talk about being better and doing better, covering all kinds of things, and we'll be more regular with my man here, Aitois. It's been a while, but we'll be doing this every Thursday, won't we?
We can make it happen.
We can make it happen. All right, cool. Let's go ahead and continue here with the idea of keeping that overhead low. Take it one step back, and then, oh, I knew it was gonna do this. It's gonna.
Needs a moment to buffer.
Yeah, I shouldn't have hit the play, huh? Should have waited.
But I think before the video starts, just to say a few things, I think the most important thing that he said that can easily get overlooked is the part about failing elegantly. And
Mhm.
failure teaches you more than wins. Failure teaches you what not to do. Failure teaches you what doesn't work. For example, in this whole scaling thing, what didn't work was trying to reach out to old employees and say, hey, how about working for me part-time? Because I need to get the following done. And I'll give you this kind. It doesn't work because employees get salty, and as anyone should. Why they feel that, hey, I have a reduced role, was I not good enough, and then you start discussing hours and benefits and vacation. It gets tricky. So going to
Mhm.
your old employees, or what I call going back to the X, is not the way to go. So you learn to make those decisions.
Indeed.
Very few employees outsourcing, even if it means paying a lot more for something than you normally would have to when you scale. In other words, if you're faced with a decision, say, okay, I can, test my idea and do it in a way where, let's say, I'm going to have maybe zero margin. I'm not going to make any money. I could sell something for $100, and the way I have to do it's going to cost me $100 to make. But by doing that, I have to have no inventory. I can have other people manufacture. I can lay off all the risk on other people and have cash preserved, because cash is king in a small business, right? And then it'll allow me to test the idea, get my read. Is it working? Is it not? Well, guess what? If it's working, what do I do next? Now, okay, great, it's working. Let me try to find out more about how big the market is, what price point is the most effective, right? Once I have my real intelligence, know I'm onto something, then I start switching off into the succeeding wildly category, which means now I start running the business in a way that actually is designed to make money, to get the lowest price for the goods I'm making, manufacture, right? Outsource when I shouldn't and not outsource when I shouldn't. So I make very different decisions once I'm certain that what I have is actually working, versus just saying, I know it's so great. I promise you guys. I mean, the man I say guys is gender neutral. No matter how great you think your idea is, unless you get just real lucky, and I've gotten lucky sometimes, it just works. It usually takes 4 or 5 little pivots or nips or tucks until you get it dead on board.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. So what is he saying there? Again, what is he saying there? The principle is you're going to need a landscape of experimentation, of trial and error, of failure, as Aitwa was mentioning earlier. But it is more fundamental. It is not like a good thing or a best practice. The way a business starts is by trial and error, and the quickest way to do it is to get customers. So in this environment where because in the context of a business that already exists, that is not going through an environment where there's turmoil. We're talking about the pandemic. We're talking about 2022. Same things. There's still a lot of uncertainty right now in the market. In this particular kind of environment, you get to, again, one more time, determine for yourself, okay, what works, what
What
doesn't
doesn't
work.
work?
Get yourself into a place where you're taking more risk, okay? It's almost like you need for things to bump up against each other in order for you to learn and grow. And then when external things shake up, the external world is doing that work for you. Things are getting shaken up. And it's like there's a saying, when the tide goes back, all of a sudden you see whom wasn't wearing underwear or something, right? Right. So when the external environment removes all the BS from the room, it is
Mhm.
done your job. You're like, oh, that's where the value is. This is
Right.
what's actually working. This is not what's working. You see both internally in your organization and also externally. So I don't know if you were hearing, the other parts that I was playing with regards to what he was saying, but
Yeah, I had to address something. I missed it, but I have seen this video, and one of the things that he touches on, he really takes you into understanding the value of what you learn during those tough times. Right? He does talk about understanding overhead, because what happens very easily in a business. Let's use the pandemic. The pandemic, we saw an incredible amount of um, business loans. Disaster loans being
mhm,
paycheck forgiveness. It's
mhm,
easy to get that money and suddenly say, okay, now we've got money. We're going to buy 8 computers. We're going to hire 10 people. We're going to send out Google ad blasts and things like that. It's so easy to just to have these internal thoughts and think, oh, I've got the money, I'm going to execute. And the process of scaling really puts you into the mindset of choosing and making very key decisions that will not only help you long term, but really start to give you strategies as a business owner with how you can maintain tough times. And let me put it this way: when you can maintain tough times, you really start to live like tough times. And what
mhm,
happens when times get better, those tough times teach you how to live, or not live, but teach you how to operate your business strategically more than it
mhm.
is more than being emotional about it, because that's another problem. People get emotional in business. They're attached to ideas, they're attached to concepts, and the reality is sometimes they don't work. And being able to separate, and those tough times teach you how to survive. So when you know how to survive, especially if you're a business or any business that survived through the pandemic, I think you're indestructible unless you choose to fold your business.
So insofar as we're talking about what works and the choices to make vis-a-vis what to scale and what not to scale, there's certain things, there's certain areas that I think if we just zoom out again, we can point out there in the landscape. Number one is creativity and creative endeavors, okay, does not scale. All right.
That's right.
So if your business, okay, so what I'm getting into right now is starts getting into a product versus service aspect of things. And I'll say why I said that in a second. But let's just stay here in this what scales and what doesn't scale. So if your work involves the use of Jeff's creativity, then Jeff's hours are not a scalable unit,
That's
right?
correct.
Because you can't just, Jeff is not fungible, right? Jeff is not interchangeable. You can't just say, well, get me 5 more of Jeff hours. No, Jeff hours come with a certain je ne sais quoi or whatever. They come with a certain something, creativity again, that you cannot get. So there's certain areas. Let's say it could be in the knowledge game. Shout out to the lead attorney, I believe is in the chat. This can even present itself in the knowledge game, like in the law, for example, where maybe it's not creativity, but there's a certain amount of cleverness and that comes along with it. That hey, you can't just multiply that. Either you got Lipowitz. Okay, Lipowitz is the lawyer, right? You know, he's the best in Long Island. Okay, either you got there's only one Lipowitz, right? You can't go multiplying Lipowitz. So you have to know that if you're in that business, therefore, certain service industry, knowledge game type things are not scalable. Okay, so you have to look for other places where things can be granularized and unitized so that you can trade them back and forth. What else isn't scalable, or have you had any hard lessons learned recently about losing the creative aspect and realizing, hey, you can't just multiply yourself or something, right?
Yeah, and I'll take an example from the law school. What we have are some, running a law school along with the university. We actually have to hire a lot of attorneys who can teach part time in the law school. So just picture the courtroom during the pandemic. Of course, not a lot of trips. So we had these high talent people available to teach. So what the opposite happened was, because they were scaling and coming to our school as a way of, I'm going to make some money and get some my finances going while I can't go into court and argue. So they were scaling on us. So when the courtrooms and everything opened back up, they're getting busier and now demanding more money, and we're trying to figure out, how do we keep you guys we can't afford what you're asking for right now, because when they were desperate, they were coming to us. So that's something that sometimes that we need to look at, is that sometimes people are scaling with us, right? So what I learned, to answer your question directly, was I had a couple of attorneys that we as an institution said, we have to keep these guys. So our strategy to scale them, if you will, was to say, instead of paying you to teach 3 different classes, one on 2, let me just take 2 instead of Mondays and Wednesdays, Tuesdays and Thursdays. Here's what we're going to have you do. We're going to have you record a lecture. We're going to call it module 1, and we're going to, week 1, and then we're going to record, the next lecture will be week 2. So what we would then do is broadcast that same lecture live to 2 different groups as a live lecture, because what the high talent was asking compensation for was their time. So we said, instead of paying you twice, why don't we pay you once? You record the whole class for a month. 8 weeks, you'll record week 1, week 2, and then you'll just sit there after the lecture has been broadcast and answer questions from students. So high talent you can somehow work with them to say, hey, this is a situation, because as long as you get to a point where it's a win-win, where they feel I'm compensated for my hours, and we're giving our customers what they want, and we're meeting our objective as an institution to provide education to our customers, which are students, it's a win-win. So some of the instructors were like, nope, not going to happen. Some said, hey, sure. They recorded the lecture. What that lecture turned into, for us, it became asset, right? Intellectual property that we can use potentially for another class and another class. So it's really about, really sitting down and thinking, and a lot of critical thinking and meeting of minds needs to happen, because yes, some people cannot be scaled. Musician, you can't say, hey, but I saw a few musicians of mine that were performing concerts in their home studios to a Zoom audience, weren't getting the full money, but they were normally getting, but they were getting paid. So we have to just be creative, right? And look for ways to deliver. And if anything, the pandemic has taught the whole planet, if you will, is that you can still do something without doing it how you used to do it. You just have to be able to think about it and make sure it's a win-win. That's the most important thing. It's coming with the win-win.
So things tend to be open to negotiation again when there are times of uncertainty.
That's right.
Because again, ladies and gentlemen, when I came in here, I said, hey, my name is Ike, and I'm going to show you why 2022 is the perfect time for you to scale. And so far, we've been showing why that is the case. By
That's right.
talking about what scaling is, and the fact that fundamental to scaling is granularizing, unitizing, and understanding very clearly your variable costs. that happens naturally in these kinds of times. Also, things are up for sale more, and things tend to be more renegotiable, right? All of a sudden, you can negotiate a new deal on your, maybe it's a student loan or
That's right.
whatever it may be, on your rent, right? Different, because everything is up for grabs now, or everything is up for renegotiation, because the external, it's not just a local thing. It's not a localized acute trauma. It's a generalized acute trauma that everybody feels, and all of a sudden all kinds of opportunities are going to be open. But let me say something uh, about another thing that we'll hear from the wayside here, about this message of, you go out there, you granularize things, outsource things, scale things, this is the perfect time to do it. Someone else will come at me, the first person that came before that talked about, hey, you're outsourcing our jobs. They'll come at you here and say, hey, you're telling me to take like a MIC job and this gig economy stuff, and look at what you did to those professors, the lawyers, right? You took their stuff, and you're recording it and this and that. And now there are many ways you could try to address that, right?
Mhm.
But how would you address that? Do you go, hey, you know what, this is life, and take the stoic path, and hey, pick up yourself and get it done? Or what kind of mixture would you tell the people whom are saying, hey, this is not all good, this is actually bad for some people?
Well, the first thing that we always do in business is everything we're doing is by choice. You are employed by choice, and we're all choosing into what we want to do. What my response to anyone would be is this: I have a mission. We have a mission as an institution, which is to deliver education to our students. That's my mission. The mission of the instructor is to be paid for his time and his services. And of course, the student's mission, if I were to put that in a mission terms, would be to get education from the school and, eventually meet their long-term educational goals. So that being said, is that happening right now? Yes. And because we're able to negotiate, we're saying, I will pay you. I'm not asking you to do it for free. You will be compensated for your time. Okay. And if they agree, then that means that I can meet my mission of delivering education to my students, and my students can continue to get the education that they paid for. So, at any point, if we take the pandemic as a perfect example, the uncertainty created these negotiations, right? Prior to that, I paid for whatever, we agreed on the contract, and I'm still doing that. Maybe perhaps we are both scaling where I'm not paying you as much as I was paying you before, but I'm still paying you. You're not doing as much as you were doing before, but I'm still paying you. But what cannot be compromised is the customer. The customer is still getting a lecture. So there's always something in a business that cannot be compromised. You look at a store like Chipotle, they cannot not sell, burritos and salad bowls. That's the bottom line. Maybe they're paying 4 people to do it part-time, and it's creating a line out the door, but they have to keep producing burritos and salad bowls. So we, as an institution, we have to keep giving out education. And as long as anyone is willing to work with us,
Mhm.
that you're still being compensated for your time, we're going to take that, because the bottom line is this: if there wasn't a pandemic, that never would have happened. Now, let us just pretend that we're just watching our overhead. We're trying to reduce costs. It's a little bit different, right? Then it's a little bit more of, maybe I'm going to look for retired attorneys, because retired attorneys they'll teach for free. They'll say, hey, I got nothing to do. The only thing I know in my life is law. So if you want me to come and talk to students for free, please. But of course, there's a challenge. The older they are, the more technologically challenged they tend to be. So there's a crossroad, right? And as an institution, our job is to ultimately deliver education to our students. And we're willing to work with anyone that will meet our terms and conditions, as long as it's a win-win. So we've
Okay.
had instructors that said, nope, I'm not going to do it. So we go for the win-win.
So yes, the challenge was, hey, you know what, this thing is not working out great. This renegotiation is not working out great for certain workers here, and
Right.
you're saying, hey, well, number one, this was an act of God. You don't have control over certain circumstances, and then number two, you're operating under the principle of free exchange by consenting adults. Some
That's right.
said no, some said yes. And
That's
then
right.
with regards to the person on the other side of the table that's negotiating with you, as you said, they're doing less for you, but now their time is expanded to do maybe, in other words, it's the sending of videos to various institutions, including yours,
Right.
okay, is a very scalable thing for them now,
That's
right?
exactly what they're doing too.
Yes, rather than sit in your lecture hall or your whatever, get paid their salary, whatever, you tell him, hey, just send me a video. Now
Right.
he can send 100 people a video, right? And he can scale things up that way, which kind of leads to something about the education problem, which perhaps, you see, we should be getting perhaps the best teachers in the world to teach certain topics, subjects, pre-record. In other words, like you should be learning math from the best known mathematics teacher. Is this guy that teaches physics in MIT? I think he's retired now. Probably one of the best physics teachers. Why isn't everyone learning from that? Because the technology actually makes it possible,
Right.
right? Even though everything is not complete yet. But don't worry, the metaverse is coming, and Mark Zuckerberg will save us all, right? Isn't that?
You will.
What are your thoughts on Mark, by the way? A slight segue before we continue the conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, by the way, like, share, subscribe, okay? And this is Aitois. He is the president of American Heritage University, the head of the School of Admissions for the School of Law, for the law school.
That's
Okay.
right.
Now, what are your thoughts on Mark Zuckerberg? Many things are said about him, and his demeanor, his soul or lack thereof, what Facebook is doing and why Facebook is so evil. Any thoughts about the Zuck?
I think that in order to be great, in order to be really, really great, in order to change the world, you're gonna have enemies. You're gonna have things said about you that are sometimes not true, or sometimes are opinions based on, because a lot of things go into play here. Uh, Different values and cultures and belief systems and fears and take the uncertainties, take some of the election stuff that's happened, take all of the rumors and research that's done behind social media, and you start to see that you're low key speaking to a lot of fears and activating some parts of people that they have not been able to address properly, and are just using this man as excuse me, as the, oh, it's your fault, you're doing something wrong. But I think that innovation comes with the price, and being able to innovate and being able to run what he's doing and what he's created for the world, you're going to have enemies. So I personally, I don't have anything. uh, I just think that he's doing what he needs to do as a business. I mean, I don't know how often we talk about Reed Hastings, right? The CEO of Netflix. Who can remember when Netflix started doing DVDs, and when they were
Mhm.
trying to get rid of DVDs, there was so much backlash. Every you know DVDs are extinct, right? They still sell them, but it doesn't matter anymore. And now you could slowly see how literally every entertainment company or industry have some form of streaming. So it's, I think what he's doing is a challenge. I don't think he was prepared for the success that he had. I don't think he was prepared for some of the backlash he's getting. But I think that we still have a choice. Social media is still a choice. You have a choice to sign up for Facebook or not. And whether we want to accept it or not, there are devices listening to us all the time. The government has our information, and we just have to be safe out there.
There you go. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. So, and by the way, the super chat button still works. We accept your super chat, your cash app, your EBT cards, your food stamps. We'll give you cash value or have cash value for your food stamps, as Dr. Thunder always says. So there's a comment here, and before we go back to playing the video on the screen here, talking about the marketing side of growing, because basically that side says, let's call it the evangelical team, which is the marketing and sales team. They go out there, they evangelize about stuff, they try to get you new people to bring in. This is another side of the scaling question, okay? Which, by the way, let's take a little segue here to ask you if there are any things that you had to relearn about this aspect of growth and scaling in the past, under the uncertain circumstances of the past couple of years, right? What have you learned about, outreach, selling, marketing, finding possible new students, or what have you?
Well, one thing that we should all understand in during times of uncertainty, people go back to school. That's typically when enrollment increases. That's when people want to get improve their skills and things like that. But because the pandemic was so it was so it affected everything. I think for the first time we're seeing enrollments actually drop in the education system.
Mm,
However, um, because enrollment in the United States is dropping, it doesn't mean that it's dropping in other places in the world. So what did I do during this time? I started to reach out to more partners, forming new partnerships. I reached out to people in Ghana, I reached out to people in Angola, reached out to people in Nigeria, reached out to people in India. I reached out to in Dubai. Actually, I spent some time getting some contacts in Dubai, and what I learned very quickly, education from the United States is highly respected all over the world. So what does that do for us as an institution? That means that we can put together we can offer our curriculum, because the way education is taught in the U.S. is it ranks pretty high, in especially third world countries. Our education is admired. So what I took the opportunity was make connections with
tertiary
people.
level education, right? That university level education in the
Right,
United
right,
States,
right. That's right.
not
Yeah. No.
not K through 12.
Thanks for bringing me back to my flight there. I found that a lot of them still find institutions, like you just corrected on the university level, very attractive. So it wasn't hard to find. I mean, rather, before I say the word hard, as soon as I made those connections, it totally opened up a ton of new opportunities for cross-border education, curriculum development opportunities. That's actually where I got my partner in India. And one thing that they have over there, they have numbers. At any given moment, there's 100, 200 students waiting to go to school because everyone's trying to get out of Bangalore, trying to get out of somewhere. So that marketing and during the pandemic was a lot easier because of course flying, having to wear a mask on a 26 hour flight was not fun. But the opportunities that opened up while I was in Dubai, and the times that I was having Zoom meetings in from folks in Ghana, you could see that there is a thirst. There is a breed of people and societies that are looking for a higher education, and being a flexible educational institution, we're able to offer partnership tuition prices
Mm,
that that make up for the they make up the big picture with numbers. So there are a lot of students. So I can so
mhm.
take a school like DeVry where I went. You can have a class of 15 people. You know that each person paid probably somewhere around $10,000 for that term. So if you have 5 people, there goes your money. But when you're dealing in a place like India, you're looking at 2,000 students. Maybe they're paying $500 or $1,000 each. Then all of a sudden, the power of multiplication kicks in, right? So that really taught me that education is not limited to the United States. I've always known this, but during the pandemic, in reaching out to those type of places, I found that there is a desire, there's a thirst for education from the United States. And being that we're a private institution, I'm able to work with it. I'm able to be I can be a lot more flexible because I'm only reporting to the state of California, and they have their checklist. As long as I meet their checklist with every partnership, we're okay. So I learned that that was something that worked out for me during the pandemic, as far as reaching out
Mhm.
making new connections in businesses.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense. So, understanding that the marketplace is global, not just in terms of you getting talent,
That's
but
right.
also in terms of you getting customers, is 100% key. This is something else that I'm actively involved in big and small in several ways, right? One of the ones that I talk about here in my channel is the car business, the transportation business in Ghana, whereby you are coming in as the bank. That's basically what you're doing there. Okay, $7,000 is needed to buy a nice Toyota something. Okay, that'll like a Yaris or something. That'll be good for Uber over there. Okay, people can't go to the bank or get credit for $7,000 in Ghana.
Mm.
It's for the big men, okay? And the big men they have other things to do. So basically, how do you get to this large market of potential drivers, right? You come in and you give them the car basically, and they pay you on a weekly basis, such that over 3 years they pay you
Make the money back.
$14,000 back.
That's right.
$14,000 back, but you would have paid a couple of $1,000s over the course for insurance and certain other costs that you would have. So you have certain costs all through, but they're giving you cash flow as it goes, right? So this is
Right.
something that I'm tapping into. 2 cars so far. I'm trying to see how to scale it in a particular regard where I can get people, where I can be the broker, right? I say, hey, Aitwa, you got $7,000 and you want to make it 14 in 3 years. And then after that 3 years, maybe double up again, maybe get 2 cars in between, and then we get 3 cars, maybe have 6 cars at a time, that kind of thing. It can start to. So point being, going out there all of a sudden because of the technology. What is the technology? Technology is this, your phone,
That's
right?
right.
That this is the thing we're talking about. It has
That's
now
right.
made it possible that, hey, you can go out there and feel the need, the transportation need in Ghana with your $7,000 per car, per driver, and now you're in the business. So same thing with, finding job opportunities in Nigeria in the petrochem industry for my engineering company, for example, is something else that I'm looking at. But obviously, definitely been involved in the hiring of people internationally, which is a great competitive edge, competitive advantage that you can get in certain service sector worlds, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Engineering sweatshops. Yes, yes, yes. So let's continue. Let's continue. There are a couple of things that we could also say about economies of scale, but which we haven't gotten to yet, which are a slightly separate thing from what scaling is and why environments such as these are great for scaling. But let's continue here with Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street.
Balls right. And the idea is that when you're going through that process, you want to have things like low overhead. So that's low overhead, right? You want to have maximum cash flow, meaning do not say, oh, I could get 80% margins. Like I could buy 10,000 of these things, and you'll have a huge warehouse full of these, and no one freaking ends up wanting, and you're screwed. So please be very disciplined and don't tempt the fate god. Meaning, I'm so great, it's so awesome that it's just going to work out, because he will not let it work out. He will piss on you, and that will be the end of that. And when I talk about limiting beliefs, which is a really important subject, what happens is when you make the mistake and you fail miserably and you lose all your money and you feel terrible and people are snickering at you behind your back or not, whatever, but they probably are, right? I know they snickered at me when I lost all my money, right? You start saying to yourself, okay, maybe I'm not meant to be an entrepreneur. Maybe I'm not destined for success. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Maybe I'm not that smart. That's how you start processing. You always try to apply meaning to what happens to you through language. When you're in a disempowered state after a failure and you feel bad, you're like, oh, and you start giving all these ridiculous meanings to your failures versus, maybe I should have tested the idea I thought was so smart. Maybe I should have just bought 5 of these things and figured out whether people really want them. Not, maybe, it's so funny. Like, for example, let me use an example of Groupon, which really never became what people thought it would become. It was still a success, right? They started off as a company that was raising money for these idiotically ridiculous projects. Like, and I'm not even making this up, this is true. Let's put a dome around the entire city of Chicago. And let's see if we can't raise money for that. That's how they started. They were funding these crazy, ridiculous dream projects and getting no traction. No one really cared, but they had that edge there that a certain number of people had to sort of opt in before it would go effective. So people would tell their friends. There was a viral aspect to it, right? Didn't work. Well, somewhere, I think we had to about a year and a half or two, by sheer, by force, that I had to, I forgot his name. He said, you know what, we can't pay the bills. Let me just go to a local nail salon and see if we can't apply the same thing and maybe get someone to go to the nail salon. They try and boom, it takes off like a rocket ship. And they realize that, wait a second, if we apply that principle, though, to these small little retail outlets, we can bring in mass and so on and so forth, right? Now, they were lucky because they had people financing them. They lived to fight another day. Most people that were trying to, build domes around Chicago probably went broke before they ever got to the truth of the idea. My point is this. When you go into business, you want to be very, very conservative on how you spend money, on how you actually go out and test your ideas. Everything is designed to maximize cash in hand, maximize cash flow, minimize risk. Whenever you can, you want to use OPM, other people's money. Another secret I did not know when I was 21 that I learned a lot about when I was like 3, right? So all those mistakes that I made when I was in my very early 20s, when I got to my kind of early 20s, but I knew what not to do. I didn't go out. Here's another classic one. I'm going to embarrass myself here because you're going to laugh at this. But when we started this ridiculous meat and seafood business. We went to some accountant. Just so happened he was like a Jewish kosher accountant. The guy didn't know as much about the meat business as Santa Claus, basically, right? So we tell him our idea, and he goes, goes, you know what, guys? I think you guys are gonna be rich. My partner, like, we're gonna be rich? Holy shit. We need write-offs. Let's get champagne. I'm not even kidding. We actually started looking for write-offs before we sold the first box of meat. Because I saw it in a movie or something. You get it? The idea is that when you first get started, you got to be ultra conservative. Conserve your cash. Test your ideas. Use other people's money. And also don't get emotionally attached to ideas.
Okay, so now the things that he has said, which are just going to the whole point of keeping your overhead low so you can have an environment that is amenable to experimentation, which is the same environment, by the way, when things are chaotic. Okay, that's the whole point that we're making here with regards to overhead and understanding variable costs. Besides that, okay, there's something that he's saying here, which is about money. Really, at the end of the day, you want to scale because you want more money. So let's go back to that side of the equation, okay? Because I think that if we get theoretical and granular, about how to granularize things and how to unitize things and understanding the variable costs and all these other things and maybe getting into marketing from a granular way, let's zoom back out now to the big money. We said, why do you want to scale? One of the big reasons you want to scale is because you want to scale up, right? And because when you grow yourself out of problems.
That's right.
You grow yourself out of mistakes. You grow yourself all kinds of errors. You grow out of bad processes and such. And then when the famine comes again, then you can stop and then check to see all the mistakes that you were papering over in your growth years. That's typically how it goes, right?
Right.
You then have to look back and force yourself to see, well, what do I really need? What's important? And so on. Now, also on the growth and money aspect is this thing called the economies of scale. So basically the idea is this, you get 30 apartments rather than get 3 apartments if you're going to be in the real estate business. Well, why? Why should I do that? Well, because you either get 30 apartments and 30 apartments will pay for a manager, right?
That's
Who
right.
maybe stays in one of the apartments. Okay. You give him one of the apartments for free. Like, that's a cost, right? He gets an apartment at cost for, free, and you pay him a certain amount. Or you get 3 apartments and then you have to worry about checking their toilets and their plumbing and all that kind of stuff. You become a manager, right?
Right.
So there's an idea of don't go test things out in a certain regard, okay? But then there are other places where don't go small, just go straight big. Do you disagree with that? Let's get granular and specific. This is in real estate, for example. So the idea is you want to test ideas out, right?
Right.
You understand that. Keep low overhead. Okay.
Right.
I say that's great in services, for example. That's great in services spaces. Okay. It's not going to be okay. But let's say you want to get into something like real estate.
Mm-hmm.
In there, perhaps it makes more sense to immediately get the economies of scale to start with, rather than try to get one house here and it's either 0 or 1. It's either 100% occupied or 0% occupied. Why don't you get something bigger such that you can float at 80% occupancy while also having it pay for itself by somebody else, blah, blah, blah. Where do you come in this kind of argument of, well, start small in real estate, buy and then grow, versus no, just wait, partner up with somebody, gather up your money together, and then just go big and have the thing run itself?
Well, there's fail and fail often, right? And there's this notion that you don't have to be completely ready. You just have to start, right? If you're trying to get into 30 apartments, first of all, that's a lot of money. And what we don't often talk about, and I'm sure that you must have addressed this in one of your shows, when you're starting a business, no one wants to give you money. No one wants to give you money. I remember when I started my business, I'm putting applications everywhere. They look, let me have your business plan. Let me see your vision. And then they say, hey, you don't have enough. Now that I don't need the money from these lenders, they're writing me every week. Hey, you could take $150,000 on your business right now. We can triple your credit line. Look, I don't need it, right? And you've said this on the channel before, the world rewards masters, right? They don't care about you if you're not a master. So what that means is you have to be your own investor. And unless you came upon some kind of wealth or been saving a lot of money or something, it's a challenge to start a business with a lot of money. So being conservative and starting with a little money is to me is because what you want to, this is how I look at it. If you're going to start a business and that money you're going to use to start the business is what I sometimes call sunk cost. If you can lose that money and still sleep at night, then you're being conservative. But if you lose that money, you have a heart attack, then you're in trouble. But he said something very important, right? Don't use your money, other people's money. Well, why other people's money? Because you can owe other people, right? If you took a loan or you borrowed for money from someone, that's why you start a business. You want to start it as an LLC or a corporation or something, where if the lenders or the banks are coming after the business, not you. So that's of course another topic. But I think the key here, just to scale back, right, is start being conservative from the beginning, but don't wait until you're super ready, because those mistakes you're going to learn along the way, they're vital. When I started business, I made a lot of mistakes, and now I'm at the point where as soon as I see a client, I know that this is going to be a waste of my time. When I first started, I'm like, oh my God, a client. Just to share a quick example, I remember having a client. This is a doctor, okay, a medical doctor. His wife is she's running the practice, and she calls me and says, hey, I've been told that you have a consulting firm. I need this is what we want to do. We want to grow our business. We want to do this, we want to do that. I'm really serious. And we're exchanging texts, and I'm thinking, okay, great. And I said, I could get my team to get started on this. And I didn't follow any rules. I said, you're a medical doctor. And I contacted my team in India, and I said, hey, listen, guys, we've got this project. Go ahead and get started. The lady's really serious. They took my word for it. In 4 days, they had sent me some stuff that they've already done. I was really happy with it. And it says, can we get paid now? I was like, you know what? I'm feeling really good about this lady, right? And I paid them the money. And that was about 2 years ago. I haven't heard from her ever since. So I write to her, she doesn't respond. And I'm thinking, why did I do that? Right. But so you can never be ready. There's no amount of ready you can have, because you're always going to get new situations. Look at the pandemic. As much as businesses thought they were ready, maybe they had a contingency plan, maybe they had a long-term plan or our 5-year business plan. No one anticipated the COVID pandemic. But if you have your situation in order, you understand some of the topics we're talking about today in scaling, then you're able to make it through. So my point being is, you can't never be fully ready. You're gonna run into a situation you've never heard about before. But what you must have is a mission and a vision, and you must learn some of these concepts we're talking about today. So when hard times come around, you know what to do.
Excellent indeed. Okay, Jordan Belfort, what else you got for us?
Don't say, I have to make it right. I had a friend of mine who did this, by the way. I left the meat business. He stayed an extra year in the business because he was emotionally attached. Couldn't move on.
By the way, shout out to Dr. Thunder. Thank you very much for the $5 super chat. Make sure you guys go ahead and subscribe to his channel, Dr. Thunder. Catch him every Thursday with Thunder's Thoughts and conversations with Dr. Thunder and what have you. Thank you very much for the $5 super chat. Says supporting my bro. Okay, let's go.
Cost him probably $50 million or more than that, because he would have been my partner. Whole long story. But the point is be unemotional about it. Test your ideas small. Conserve your cash. And then when you hit on things and something is getting traction, that's when you sort of flip the switch now. And there's a completely different set of guiding principles about how do you grow? How do you delegate authority effectively? How do you systemize? Because you can't just delegate authority. It's the biggest mistake entrepreneurs make, that are young. They say, oh, I got to delegate authority. They delegate and they get destroyed. They're like, oh, shit, that doesn't work. And they become these micromanagers where they go in the opposite direction because they didn't delegate correctly in the first place.
Okay, let me say something about this particular point here real quick, and then you can kind of add something here, because there's something very simple and systematic about this delegating process, okay? And because you're going to get to a point where you're the one that was doing everything before,
right?
Okay, you are the salesperson, you're the marketing person, you manage the website, you take in the calls from the clients, you write the PO, you write the quote, you send it out, you take the PO from them, you sign it, whatever, you send out the invoices, you follow up on the invoices, okay, you
and you spend the money
checks,
too.
You spend everything is you. And then you're like, okay, I'm going to either bring in a partner or hire my employee number one. There's certain things, number one, about that person, personality wise, which we might get into. And then there was a separate conversation that we've had about, I've had separate conversations about that. And perhaps in our upcoming shows, we'll talk about that. But also in terms of systematization of the role. Because what Jordan Belfort is saying is, you bring in people because you think people are going to just operate the business. and then it doesn't work out, and you're like, oh, screw people, and then you start micromanaging. So no, what you need to do is you need to be granular about everything that you do. Okay, in other words, you're starting this stuff. You know everything that you do. So
Right.
simply say, wait, when a business comes in, what's the first thing I do?
Right.
When you break these down, and then as you break these down, you start chunking them into roles. These are roles for somebody. Okay, there's a part of it. There's a whole accounting role. The person that, shall we say, which I still do for my company. Okay, or it's a bot or something like that. Let's say. Um, the accounting role of writing out the quotes and receiving the POs and keeping them in there, writing the invoices, sending out the invoices, and keeping track of all that kind of stuff. That's a whole role. There's a whole set of tasks in there. You create systems for them. You create structures for them. You say this is how we put in our invoices. This is how we always send the emails that we request invoices. These are the documents that need to be signed. Blah blah blah. And then you go into the other things that you do and you systematize them. You have checklists for them. You have all these things for them. And then you can hand it to somebody that says, hey, you now do these things.
That's right.
If you simply think, oh, I'm just going to bring in somebody and I'll just kind of show him what's going on, and then he can start doing that. It's like, no, you have to create these new roles and human beings and tasks, if you will, these roles, right, out of everything that you're doing, by first of all breaking them down into tasks, being as granular as you can, having standards and checklists for each of these tasks, and then these become roles. And then you can, again, either give it whole cloth to one person, or you can simply take pieces of it, treat them as projects, outsource them, right, to these to India, to virtual assistants, or whatever it may be. So just any thoughts about that aspect of bringing people in and not understanding? First, you have to have a system of levers and gears and buttons for them to come in and push, right?
Yeah, I was smiling the whole time you were saying that, because that was one of the shocking realities that hit me when I decided to start scaling. You forget just how much from running the business for so long. So I'll share a secret with everyone that I was doing, and this, you should try this. There is a software. It's just Google it. It's called Screenomatic,
Mm.
and it's essentially a screen capture software that can capture your webcam and can capture your screen. So what I did one day, I did exactly what I just said. I sat down and I identified every element of the business, and then each one I know how to do. So let's say building a course. I would just turn on Screenomatic and I would put on my mic and say, here's how to build a course. And the mouse is moving and I click on the program and I put everything and I save that recording as how to build a course. And then here's how to grade a course. And I started creating, the next thing you know, I had about 17 different videos. So when it was time to delegate, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, different people to do different things. For one person, I said, hey, I need you to create these courses. And when I would say courses, I would put the video link. Here is the link on how to use the system. And then I would put the username and password in there. Here's how to log in. And I would put the video on there. And so in doing that, I was immediately able to hand this over to anyone that could watch a 2 to 3 minute video. So what that taught me is that you have to be prepared to delegate, because the mistakes that I made when I first started this, there was one person I gave a project and they would send me a message and I would see the message a little bit later. And then, then I see the message in the morning because this individual was in India and then the time difference is about 10 hours. So he kept coming back with questions. Oh, and I'm like, can't you? And a light bulb went off. Wait a second. I don't think I prepared him enough. And from that moment, even something as simple as, for those of you who already run a business, and you have an email account, let's say your email account's with GoDaddy. To check your email, you type email.yourdomainname.com or .org, whatever it is. Something that's simple. For us, we know what that is. For everyone else, they had no idea. So I started documenting every thought. And in the Screenomatic software, it was $29. It's like $29 for the whole year. They give you a free one. It's you should check it out. And then as soon as I do that, it had a server so I can send them the link. But what I was doing, I would upload it into YouTube and make it an unlisted link. And check this out. As soon as I got all these videos done, part of what I had to submit for the approval of my new programs, they said, we need to have some kind of orientation for new faculty. Well, guess what? All of those videos became valuable assets in training faculty, because now I had how to grade, how to finalize courses, how to make courses. So right away, I had assets that I could pass on to my curriculum development team. I had assets I can put into professional development. I had assets I can put in for faculty orientation. So in creating these little systems with the plan to pass on to someone, you're setting yourself and your business up for long-term success and people being able to do what you know how to do in your absence. So I thought that was a great point that you brought up there, Ike.
Bingo, bingo, bingo. And I like that you brought it also into the area of training specifically, because I was just talking about, okay, well, here are the roles, and then you create the systems, but then the training thing, because what you just mentioned is something that, oh, what do you know? I happen to be doing as well.
Right.
Basically, what I do now is, so I do it on almost every meeting I record now, right? So we're working on a project, okay? It's time to review certain drawings on the project. So let's meet and share the screens and we'll look at it, okay? That's recorded, okay? It's recorded. It's a private YouTube video, as a matter of fact, okay? I go through StreamYard, record it as a private YouTube video. It has the heading, Project X, this date, blah, blah, blah. And then there's the content. But also specifically trainings. So now the first employees that I brought in, I'm training them on certain things, specifically having to do with the engineering aspects of stuff, right? And I record those now. And then after you record them, you can come back and add documents such as PowerPoints that kind of go through, yeah, here's what this training is about, let's say.
Right.
Another guy comes in, employee number 2. This is a way of now scaling your training process, right? What you now do is I hand them a link to a YouTube private video and a document that kind of says, well, this is training 1. What you're expecting to find here is, gravity
Outcomes.
supports and simple seismic bracing, whatever, right?
Right.
You have that document, you have the training, which is recorded, and you have a link, which is out there, and boom, scalable. It's out there in the cloud. These things are easy to do. These are the environments that have tested these remote/mobile aspects of mobile capacities of our technology. Mostly been tested lately in this arena. So good thing that you talk about that training, because I actually I turned out I was doing the same thing. So let us continue. Okay, shout out to each and every one of you in the chat. Shout out to Mark Holmes, Adult Supervision. Make sure you like the video as you come in, and we're going to be landing the plane shortly. But I did say, and I have been delivering on my promise, okay, that we're talking about how this is the best time for you to scale, for you to grow your business, grow your finances in these times of uncertainty, because scalability is about how you can granularize and unitize things such that you can understand your variable costs, and you can increase those variable costs to increase the output that you want, okay? And keeping your overhead low and understanding what are the things that are scale versus the things that don't scale. We say, hey, creativity doesn't scale. Let me put another thing on the table for you here. There is a idea of how does one put it now? Okay, let's talk about price control, because it's the money, the big picture of money again. What do I mean by price control? And perhaps we'll end it with this. Price control is you want 10% more money tomorrow. Well, not tomorrow. You want 10% more money next year. Okay, that's like a kind of a scaling. Okay, but in certain industries or certain businesses, you simply just turn up the price by 10%, and you have at least a 10% buffer, right? And that's what basically is called price control, I guess, right? Now there's certain businesses, and I want to get your idea of this, like because the idea of where you want to be is in the place where you can turn up the price, right?
Right.
And you don't want to be in a place where you can't turn up the price. So I'm gonna label one valley, one low point in this landscape of ability to raise the price or not. The low point is in commodities. You don't want to be in commodities. What are commodities? Let's give an example of commodities, and then we might define it. A commodity, for example, is oil or coal or certain kind of granite. In other words, it's fungible. This granite, that granite, his coal, your coal, my oil. I got it too. It's me too.
Right.
It's a commodity, right? And things such as pens and all these other things, toilet paper, all these kinds of things are also commodities because they say, hey, your toilet paper, my toilet paper. These areas you don't have a lot of price control, right? You can't
Right.
just dictate what you're selling your coal for, right? But if you're a barber, for example, okay, and you're a good barber, you can turn up your price 20%, go from $20 to $25 over the next year, and your customers will gladly pay. They're not gonna be like, nope, I'm out to the barber next door. It's like, nah. They're like, yeah, go ahead. It's inflation, we get it, that kind of a thing. So the barber, which is more of a service thing, which I said there's a low point. A
Right.
low point there is basically commodities. And there are many ways to move away from commodities, right? But any thoughts about that? Because I think that services where you can specialize and differentiate yourself in certain ways, where you actually have the ability to turn things up highly, there is a downside in the sense that they tend to be this. They tend to have a slight the expert problem, which we talked about, and the creativity aspect, which is not very scalable,
Mhm.
right? But any thoughts on that about being ability to find places where you can actually control the price?
Oh, well, I mean, it depends. For me, how do I control my price? I control my price by outsourcing, which is a different direction. So I'll
Mhm.
give you an
You're
example. I
controlling your
had
costs,
right,
basically, right?
exactly. So I had last year. I said to myself, I'm going to hire my developer, one of my key developers in India. I'm going to hire him and put him on a retainer. So I just pay him a certain amount of money every month, and I give him X amount of projects. So what I learned very quickly was everything that he was doing, I was paying him on a project basis. So I needed to do this for me, and I'll give him a project. And over time, I started to look at the numbers, and I realized that I was giving him little tasks. What if I just say, "Hey, I'll give you X amount of money every month, and you do all of these." And what that allowed me to do is give him more work. And in his mind, he's getting more money, but in my mind, I'm giving him more work. But when I started, I was
Oh,
happy. So in doing that, now he's getting more money on a stipend in his mind, and I feel like I'm giving him more work. So what that started to do is increase my profits like dramatically because now I'll give him a project and he's happy and he hasn't complained. And I always tell him, I say, hey, look, if this is going to be more, oh, he goes, no problem, sir, because I'm also a means to survival for him. So he's more interested in doing the work and pleasing me at the same time that he so I always tell him, look, if this is going to be outside of the scope, I know that we agreed on X amount of hours, X amount of work, but I just felt like I was giving him more to do and he was just knocking him out of the way. So that's one way to do it. Now, in terms of increasing price as a service, what I've done is I've intelligently added value to services that I offer and increase the price, but using the aspect of value. Let me give you an example. I said to a client, listen, for $5,000, I'll do this project for you. The last time you and I spoke, you said, you were looking at spending about 3,000, but here's why this 5,000 is different. Now I would have a webmaster, a dedicated webmaster for you for 1 year at no additional cost. Well, guess what? The gentleman that I put in on my retainer, that's just part of the work. Now, what do I know as a web developer and a consultant? They're not going to need anything for a year. I know that for sure. But I give them that, hey, for 1 year, my guy is going to be whenever you need him. I know they're probably going to get in touch with me in about 18 months that something went wrong, right? The first year is included. Oh, you mean I get covered for a whole year? That sounds like a great deal. Well, it is a great deal, right? Because there will be times that you need it, but I know that they're not going to need it. And if they need it, I factored the fact that I'm paying this dude a retainer. It's a fixed cost. He's happy. And sometimes a month goes by, he doesn't do anything. Some months goes by, he does more. So you can do that by adding value to your service. But the most important thing, that value can't cost you anything, right? So I would say you have access to my tech guy 24/7, and I will give you 2 hours free of consultation free every month for the next year. Really? Well, you're too busy starting your business up for the first year. You're not going to call me, or you may be too busy calling me, but that's factored in as my own cost. That's really not taking any money out of me. If anything, it teaches me some things that I would use for another client later down the road because, we say fail elegantly. So when I fail from that one, I would say maybe this didn't work. So you can increase the value added and justify the increase in price and people are always willing to pay when there's value. Look at gas prices right now. I drive an EV, so sorry, I don't really care about gas prices.
Oh, Tesla over here.
No, for real. I didn't notice, but I drove past. I saw $5.69 for premium, and I'm thinking to myself, what does it make your car drive better? But people are still the line is, and I drove past Sam's Club the other day. The line is it's because there's value in gas. We need gas to move around. So the key thing here, ladies and gentlemen, is to add value that doesn't cost you anything as a service provider to your customers, and so that when you increase your price, it's justified. And I'll close my thoughts by saying that, have any one of you ever seen, you go on a website, you're trying to buy something or get a service, they'll say basic, the free version, you get this much, the beginner's version, this is the price, you get this much, and then this is the pro version, you get this much, and an expert version, you get this much. The truth of the matter is the company can afford to give you the free version. They can afford to give you everything you're getting in the free version, in the maximum version, basically at the free version. But it's how much are you willing to pay? So as long as you can put enough value, that's why you'll see sometimes there's a feature that you really want, but that feature is only available on maybe the pro service, because they've sat down and done their homework. They know that this particular service is the most requested service, or this one isn't. So just putting some value in your service to your customers or clients will allow a justification in price. That's why people would sometimes choose a 7-star hotel. At the end of the day, it's still just a bed to sleep, or people would pay $2,000 more to fly first class. It's still the same plane. We're landing at the same time, type of thing. So that's my take on that. And that's how I would justify it, either by cutting costs to increase your profits the following year on your next financial statements, or increasing your service by adding some value for your customers. That's what I would do.
Got it. So a couple of things you mentioned there kind of brought a couple other things to mind, which is, first of all, on this adding value part, there is a, shall we call it, boutique, I think is the term, right? So there's a boutique aspect to that, in the sense that, you have this law firm, for example.
Mhm.
It's not it doesn't handle the biggest clients, but it handles, nice clients, but it gives them a very personal, let's say, kind of service. It could be an accounting firm or whatever it may be, where there's a certain level of service which the bigger guys cannot provide, right?
That's right.
That's what that boutique thing is about. In other words, and the boutique guys tend to be a little bit more expensive, but you're fine with him. You're fine with Jim and his accountant firm, because you guys go way back and he operates, you can always call Jim, that kind of a thing.
He knows your kids.
He knows your kids, all that kind of sector too. That's a place where, because the gym thing, as we know, doesn't scale very well, because you can't just multiply gyms and, if we just multiply these people that give great service to everybody and that everybody loves. It's like, no, people love Jim. They don't love, Peter. That's the whole thing about the service thing, but you could get into a boutique aspect. But another thing that came to mind was the idea of the certainty that you were giving the guy that you were giving the salary, right?
Mhm.
This is something I've noticed as well. And we can get perhaps in our next conversation more into the psychology aspect, in other words, in the persuasion, motivations, in the sense that he could get money per project and he could perhaps make more, but it was an uncertain thing.
Right.
Like, it was like, okay, look,
Because I sometimes 2 months go by and he has no projects.
or you can say, hey, I'm going to give you this per month. And that's a completely different psychological need, or it's an adjacent, but on a different axis psychological need than just the money, right?
Right.
To have the certainty, huge, right? So you will find out that, hey, you get this guy freelance, like same thing in my case. Get somebody, when I say freelance, I mean like per hours per project, you're giving
Right.
them work. Then you gauge, like, okay, I think they can do this much in a full month.
Right.
You can get more work. You can pay them actually less than they did that month per project, and they'll be fine. They can take on extra stuff. They'll kind of rearrange their life differently, is what it tends to be. But okay, I'm gonna give you the last word, because it seems like time has flown by fairly. It did fly by. Okay, so it's been an hour and a half, ladies and gentlemen. So what was my big claim? Okay, what was my big claim? My big claim was that basically, in times of uncertainty, you are forced to look and granularize things and understand your variable costs. Basically, in times of uncertainty, companies are forced to understand their variable costs. And it is in the clear understanding and demarcation of variable costs and the unitizing of them, the granularizing of them, the discretization of them, if you will, that makes it such that you can scale things, right?
Right.
You can multiply or divide, which is what scaling is about. Scaling allows you to be able to morph with the marketplace, and scaling now allows you to scale up, which is a good thing, which because you can cover up mistakes with your growth. Scaling gives you the opportunities, the good things about scaling gives you a bigger pipeline. As we said, is self-sufficient. Like if you have 30 apartments versus 3, with 30 it can manage itself because it can pay enough to have a manager and those kinds of things, right? So those are all the things about scalability and whatnot. But in times of uncertainty, number one, you are forced to look at things to make them more granular and be lean, get more lean and mean, if you will. But also, there's opportunities to buy things, and things are also more open for negotiation
That's right.
in
That's right.
these times. And the general decentralization when it comes to going to Upwork or finding other networks by which you can hire people, and there are many networks out there in terms of finding different levels of skill. Okay, you need some people in the more engineering world, you can reach out to me. I know where you can get good labor, the way of testing these people, and also the way of training them and scaling your training and whatnot. But we got a couple of super chats as we end here. I'm gonna give you just if you have any final closing thoughts, Aitois, as we close this out. He says this one is right here, 1999.
Rightly divided mystery media.
Rightly divided mystery media. Thank you very much. Always very generous. Always very generous here. And I think Dr. Thunder gave a super chat twice. Yeah, he did another super chat. Thank you very much. Say support my bro. Okay. So that was what I promised, and that's what I delivered. That's why this is the perfect time. Times of uncertainty, perfect time for you to scale things, go out there, have experiments. Low overhead. You get the picture. So final thoughts, sir.
My final thoughts would be, if you're a business owner, my advice is take a day, sit down and divide your business. Just if you're like me, I always like to open up a blank Word page and an Excel document for starters, because Excel allows me to put numbers and Words allows me to type. And of course I can put words in Excel as well. So divide your business into, everything. Look at costs that are this is a fixed cost. This is not changing unless I relocate or something. And if you have a phone service, look into things like voice over IP. If you just lay all your services out and find out, can my business survive if I turn the service off? Or can my business survive if I turn the service off for a couple of months? Can my business survive if this is not happening? And put those numbers down and be honest with yourself, because sometimes people think, well, it's going to get better. Maybe I'm going to get this loan. Maybe someone's going to help me out. Maybe the government's going to give, no. Just pretend that no one gave a crap about your business, but just you. List every service that you offer and how they make you money. Of course, you should know that already, but identify everything in your business that must happen, and then start to look at how you can turn them into little systems. And we talk about systems a lot. I know I could cover systems many times, but a system, right away, people think systems. They think, okay, you got to have this specialized computer with an 8-core CPU and RAM. No, a system could really be an Excel document talking to a Word document. It really could be that simple. But it's really something that you can say, how can I pull this off? How do I make this happen? In other words, if I want to keep delivering my service, what needs to be in place? What's missing? What's not clear? Take a day to sit down. It's an uncomfortable experience, but we all know that we grow during discomforts, right? Our uncomfortable moments is when growth actually happens. And you'll get this light bulb that suddenly goes off, like, okay, I can get rid of this. I can get rid of this. I need to keep this, and I can keep this once a week. I can keep this, I can, instead of cutting hours, maybe I could I could furlough my employees. Look at different ways, but find out what's the heart and soul of your business, right? Find out what must happen. And once you do that, I think depending on how long you've been in business or what kind of friends or people you're surrounded with, they can maybe perhaps help you. identify what you can, perhaps suspend, what you can reduce. Maybe you have a library system that, is for 1,000 students like I did. I said, what do you guys have that drops me down to 70 students? And they gave me an 80% decrease in my price, things like that. So look for the bare minimum during these times of uncertainty. It'll give you a lot of confidence. And here's the best part, and I'll close with this. Once you do this, you're suddenly going to have a new purpose to go to your office. You're going to say, oh, okay, I was supposed to call this company to scale this like this. I was supposed to do this. And then you're going to have this new drive. And that what that drive does over time, you're going to build this new zeal and motivation for your business that you've never had before. Once you can really sit down and identify these little things and little, like Ike said, granularize, right? I think that's the term you use, your business needs, and you'll see something. You're going to fall in love with your business all over again, like I did. And that's my basic closing thoughts there.
All right. Peace. We're out.
In the den of iniquity, vicinity no pretty, calamity fi hit we any moment, what a pity. Tomorrow never certain, what dwells behind the curtain, the face of evil smirking with that shifty eyes averting. It's not a steady bubble, could either pop or topple, many will fall and stumble, let the dozers gather rubble. From LA to Colorado, Guinea to Burkina Faso, cannons could reach the towers and the troops will storm the castle. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. So run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. I say, run, come, make we get it. Because the peace that is bestowed upon the meek is overrated. Lord, run, come, make we get it. Calling all your daughters and your sons, we come forget it. With the rubble steady rising, and hearts are compromising. Convictions here are stifling, making evil appetizing. The fists are steady forming, and countenance is falling. Defenses are withdrawing, possibilities are falling. In these your circumstances, evil will make advances. Pick up your sword and lances, and be sure to take your stances. Victory is never promised, the battle is upon us. Gather the brave and honest, and the righteous in your corners.